The parking lot is almost empty. It's early enough that the asphalt is still cool. A man in his late 40s walks toward a low, wide shape covered in a car cover. He pulls the cover off slowly, the way you'd unwrap something you weren't sure you deserved. Underneath it, something red and slightly hostile is waiting. He stands there for a moment, not admiring it, checking it, the way you check something that has hurt you before and probably will again. He gets in. There are no cup holders. There is barely a dashboard. There is, however, 8.4 liters of V10 engine sitting directly in front of him, separated from his feet by approximately nothing. He starts it. The neighbors are awake now, whether they wanted to be or not. Here's the question this scene raises, and it is worth sitting with. Who buys a car that makes their life harder on purpose? The answer is more interesting than you think. Start not at the beginning but in the middle 1999, a specific variant that tells you everything about the psychology driving the whole story. The Dodge Viper GTS ACR. American club racer, Dodge built it to celebrate winning the FIA GT2 World Championship, which is a polite way of saying they built it for people who felt the standard Viper was not serious enough. Racing suspension, BBS wheels, Koni adjustable shocks, standard equipment deleted, air conditioning, radio, both could be added back for $10,000. $10,000 to restore features that came free on a Honda Civic. The buyers paid it. Some of them paid it and then did not add the air conditioning back, which tells you something profound about what they were actually buying. It was not transportation. It was not even performance in the conventional sense. It was a statement about what they were willing to endure, and more importantly, what they were not willing to pretend they needed. Before we go further, a second question, one that won't make sense yet, but will. What does it mean when the most uncompromising American supercar ever built is killed not by a faster rival, not by changing tastes, but by a side curtain airbag regulation? Hold that. Go back further. 1992. Fewer than 300 units. 400 horsepower from a hand-built 8-liter V10. No ABS, no traction control, no passenger airbag. No door handles to open the door from outside. You reached through the open window frame and pulled a lever. The car did not even pretend to meet you halfway. It expected you to figure it out. And the people who bought it understood immediately that this was not an oversight. It was the entire point. The Viper was not a car that forgave you. It was a car that waited to see if you deserved it. Those first buyers, engineers, ex-racers, people who had grown up with muscle cars and watched the 80s turn them into soft, neutered things, they were not buying a sports car. They were casting a vote against comfort as a default, against the assumption that the driver needed to be managed, against the creeping softness they saw everywhere around them and refused to accept in the one place they could still control. The side exhaust pipes burned your leg if you stepped out carelessly. This was documented. Viper owners knew. They stepped carefully and said nothing to anyone who asked if it was a problem, because admitting it was a problem was missing the point entirely. Move forward. 2003, the SRT-10, 8.3 liters, 500 horsepower, a stiffer chassis, sharper lines, rear exit exhausts replacing those original side pipes. The civilizing of the Viper continued incrementally. This generation attracted a different kind of buyer, someone who had spent a decade watching the original Viper from the side of the road and had finally arrived at a point in life where he could stop watching. Mid-career, enough money, enough clarity about what he actually wanted. The SRT-10 was the first Viper that felt like a conscious adult choice rather than an act of defiance. The danger was still there. The discomfort was still there. But it was now packaged in a car that acknowledged, very quietly, that you also had to get to work on Tuesday. And then there is the 1996 GTS, the one everyone pictures when they picture a Viper. Blue, white double stripe, coupe roof, power windows, and actual airbag. The GTS was the Viper that said carefully, diplomatically, that you did not have to choose between extremity and a minimum of dignity. 450 horsepower. Racing pedigree. GT, 2 class victories at Le Mans in 1998, 99, and 2000. The GTS became the Viper of posters, of bedroom walls, of a generation of teenagers who did not yet know what they wanted from life but knew it looked like that. The GTS buyer was often someone who appreciated the mythology but also had a passenger who had opinions, someone who had negotiated a compromise between what he wanted and what the relationship would survive. The GTS let him win that negotiation without fully surrendering. 2008, 4th-generation SRT-10, 8.4 liters, 600 horsepower. The escalation made explicit. The ACR variant that year lapped the Nürburgring in 7 minutes and 12 seconds, placing it among the fastest production cars ever to complete the circuit. The buyers of this generation were not sentimental. They were scoreboard people. They wanted the fastest, most documented, most verifiable version of the Viper story. The emotional relationship with the car was still there, but it now came wrapped in data. Lap times, G-forces, lateral acceleration figures quoted from memory at dinner parties to people who had not asked. There is a specific kind of Viper owner, you know him, who can recite technical specifications in the exact tone of voice a person uses when they are actually talking about something else entirely. He is not talking about horsepower. He is talking about the decade he spent building toward the moment he could buy this car. The specs are just the language he has available. Then the 2016 ACR. 645 horsepower, the most aerodynamic Viper ever made. Lap records at 13 different circuits worldwide, 0 to 60 in 3.3 seconds. Top speed electronically limited to 177 miles per hour, not because the engine ran out, but because the downforce package made higher speeds aerodynamically complicated. The ACR was the Viper arriving at its own logical conclusion. Every excess, every uncompromising choice, every refusal to apologize taken to its absolute endpoint. The people who bought this car in 2016 were not unaware of what was coming. Sales had been declining for years. The rumors were loud. Some of them bought it knowing it was probably the last serious one. That awareness is in the car somehow. You can feel it. August 2017. Production ends. 2,427 fifth-generation cars built before the line stops. 5 special final editions, each named, each a small ceremony. The official reason, a combination of slow sales and the cost of meeting updated federal side curtain airbag regulations. The economics of installing airbags in a car that sells in volumes the Viper sold did not work, so it ended. Sit with that for a moment. The Dodge Viper, a car with no ABS, no traction control, side exhaust pipes that burned your leg, no door handles in its first year, a car that spent 25 years making the deliberate choice to not protect you from yourself, was ultimately killed by a safety regulation, not by a competitor, not by an electric revolution, not by irrelevance or obsolescence. By a side curtain airbag requirement it could not economically absorb. The most aggressively unsafe car in American production history ended because it could not comply with a rule designed to save lives in a rollover. There is an irony there that the Viper itself would have appreciated, maybe even respected. There has been no replacement. Dodge has not built another one. The space where the Viper lived remains empty, which is either a tribute to what it was or an honest admission that the world it was built for no longer exists in large enough numbers to justify the cost of building it. The man in the parking lot starts the engine, sits with the sound for a moment, and then pulls out slowly, not because he is being careful. Because the exit ramp is tight, and the Viper has no backup camera, and he learned eventually to be patient about the things he cannot change. He did not buy this car to be comfortable. He bought it to feel exactly what he is feeling right now. The specific, unambiguous sensation of being completely responsible for what happens next. No system catching him. No algorithm smoothing his inputs. Just him and 8.4 liters and the exit ramp. Some people pay a therapist for that feeling. He paid Dodge.